Shooting is totally unacceptable.
While top national security officials say the threat from Russian meddling in the upcoming midterms is real, President Trump keeps calling it a hoax.
There's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight.
The hoax is the idea that the Trump campaign was the beneficiary of a concerted effort to affect the 2016 election.
Twitter slams on the brakes after suspending the account of conservative commentator Candace Owens.
Twitter apologized to Candace Owens, saying that the lockout was just an error.
It doesn't seem logical that when they come up with a new algorithm, it only seems to affect Republican conservatives.
The surprise of a lifetime for a Massachusetts police officer making his final radio call after 32 years of service. The voice on the other end, his son.
It is my honor to acknowledge this Code 5, to set free a man who has sacrificed so much of his time for all of us.
He can come home.
Hey, now here we go, DJ. Don't you play nothing slow. Keep those girls out on the floor. Gotta make them wanna come back for more than hey.
It's a Monday morning. It is August 6th. And everyone here is talking about how hot it was here in New York over the weekend. I actually went home, so I don't know. Was that true?
I would say, yeah. Down south, it's really
it's
cold.
Always hot in August. That's just a given.
Especially South Carolina. People don't complain in South Carolina, but it's way too hot.
It is very hot, but there's so many benefits.
It ain't the heat, it's the humidity. We had a lot of heat yesterday, and we had a lot of rain on Saturday. That's what you missed.
All right. Meanwhile, there was a lot of heat. The president had a rally. There's a special election coming up Tuesday, so he's trying to rally people in Ohio, which is usually a big-time red district. They're having some trouble. The Republicans having some struggling right now, so we'll have to see how that comes out. So there's drama built into the week already.
That's right. That district is currently a dead heat. That's why the president went out there. Meanwhile, we're going to talk a little bit about the second city, Chicago, and we start with a Fox News alert. A terribly violent and bloody weekend in Chicago has ended with at least 10 people dead after dozens shot.
Rob Schmidt joins us live with the disturbing numbers. Rob, some people calling it a war zone.
Yeah, that's right. This is mostly the south side of Chicago. Another summer weekend there. One Chicago paramedic describing the city as a war zone. Ainsley, here's a breakdown of the shooting numbers from over this weekend alone. Between Friday and Sunday, 63 people were shot in the city of Chicago. 10 of those victims at this point have died. One of them, a 17-year-old boy who was just riding his bike. 34 of the 63 were shot between Saturday and Sunday morning alone, and 25 people were wounded within a 2.5-hour period over the weekend.
We are the ones who can stop the violence in our own neighborhood. Whatever the police does, what they do good, God bless them, that's their job. And at the same time, we cannot keep tying these police hands.
Well, Chicago police say most of the shootings were targeted and related to gang violence, with gunmen opening fire in large crowds. Again, most of it happening on the south side of the city. President Trump predicted Chicago violence would get worse more than 2 years ago, tweeting in 2016, quote, "Crime is out of control and rapidly getting worse. Look what is going on in Chicago and our inner cities. Not good." Chicago police say they're working with other law enforcement groups to try and get gangs off the streets to try and make the city safer. Guys, if we were talking about one incident where 10 people were killed and another 55 or 53 were wounded, it would be wall-to-wall coverage on most networks. It is a really bad situation in Chicago, and unfortunately, it's just another summer weekend there.
Right, Rob. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Meanwhile, when you talk about Chicago, you talk about a problem the president even spoke about on the campaign trail. At one point, people got to put down their partisan hats and say, if the federal government has to come in, the mayor's got to go and say, Mr. President, can you help me out? There could be leaders coming together. Also, there's a guy on the president's legal team that knows how to solve chronic crime problems. He straightened out New York City in a way that we're still the beneficiary of. And that is Rudy Giuliani. The way he combined with law enforcement to take back the city block by block, that's what's got to be done in Chicago.
But here's the thing. Apparently the feds are helping them with increased law enforcement. But, when it comes to additional National Guard or something like that, nothing like that has happened. But I was reading the Chicago Tribune in the last hour, and the gangs are unafraid of any repercussions by the cops. And that's why they're going by, and keep in mind, Lollapalooza was this weekend, so there was increased police presence in wake of what happened out in Vegas, and they targeted people just standing around there. They targeted people who were standing on a porch after a funeral and a block party. They feel that they can shoot into a group and there will be no repercussions.
There was a group just standing around talking, and there were children there and adults. A 14-year-old wounded this weekend, 11-year-old wounded this weekend, a 17-year-old killed. The mom was saying, this is just senseless. They took my baby. A 19-year-old shot in the back of the head. Finally, people in that community are standing up. They're protesting. They're calling out the mayor. They're saying, why do you keep getting reelected? Do something about this. The president, when he was on the campaign trail, said, if I have to, I'll send in the feds, or said that right after he was elected. This is a retired Chicago police sergeant, and he's calling out the mayor as well. Listen.
The mayor's, buckling under the Department of Justice, ACLU, Black Lives Matter, everybody else to get a consent decree, and he's not letting the people that do the effective policing have a voice in what they need to improve the conditions. What could he do to make things better? Abdicate his throne.
Oh, man. As bad as it is, I was reading as well that local authorities are saying that gun violence is decreasing. The Chicago Tribune says there were 533 fewer shootings as of this weekend than there were last year. Unbelievable. Wow. Is the president going to do something? Stay tuned, because the people out in Chicago want him to.
All right, yesterday on the Sunday shows, of course, you can't have a Sunday show without opening up and talking about the collusion and the Mueller investigation. And one thing that I think that this Margaret Brennan is doing a great job on Face the Nation. And here's his talking with Adam Schiff, and basically asked it, so far, despite what you keep saying and keep indicating, has there been any proof of collusion or conspiracy with the Trump administration when he was a candidate? Listen.
I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight. Now, that's a different statement than saying that there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt of a criminal conspiracy. Bob Mueller will have to determine that.
Well, then Trey Gowdy went on to say, he was on another show, he said not one scintilla of evidence. He disagrees with Adam Schiff. He said, rest assured, Adam Schiff would have leaked it if there were evidence.
That's right. John Bolton, however, who's part of the president's team, said, what's he talking about? There's no collusion.
What he's saying by the hoax is the idea that somehow the Russians directed and controlled his campaign, or direct and control his administration, that there was some conspiracy or some violation of U.S. law. The hoax is the idea that the Trump campaign was the beneficiary of a concerted effort together with the Russians to affect the 2016 election. As to that, I don't think there's any evidence publicly.
What John Bolton was trying to say to those people who say the president contradicted his own cabinet secretaries when they came out and talked about the Russian meddling in the past election and fears for this election, in that comprehensive, almost unprecedented afternoon press conference in front of the media. And the president went out that night and said, this whole Russian thing's a hoax. What he's trying to say is linking us to the Russian meddling in the election. Right. That's what he's talking about. And by the way, everybody understands the difference. It is totally disingenuous for the press to say the cabinet secretaries are speaking out to contradict the president, who doesn't seem to get it. He gets it. He's the one who told them all to go out and say that.
Over on ABC, Jay Sekulow, who is the president's one of his personal attorneys, he said that they are still having conversations with Robert Mueller's team about whether or not the president would testify. They're leaning toward no sit down. But then again, the president might not take his own lawyer's advice, he said. Also, separately, Paul Sperry, the investigative reporter, he tweeted out that he said essentially, stand by, the president will declassify 20 redacted pages from the June 2017 FISA application renewal. And what's interesting about that is if it comes out and it is revealed that the FISA application was essentially based on something that was made up, then if the president then is right about that time deciding whether or not to sit down with Robert Mueller, he would have an absolute great opportunity to say, look, I'm not going to sit down with Robert Mueller. Look at the investigation. It was based on, according to the FISA application, a lie. So I'm not going to testify.
On the dossier, Rudy Giuliani said that they will decide by Saturday if they're going to allow the president, or if the president's going to sit down with Robert Mueller.
Right. And I would just say on top of all this, if Robert Mueller ever wanted to be, at least appear as balanced in this investigation, he would be just as fervent in his mission to find out what went wrong on the Democratic side, on all the links that are out there from Peter Strzok on down and what was going on with the dossier. He could actually quiet down his critics on the right by legitimately pursuing that angle. Then everyone would sit back, but there's a sense that he just has no interest in what happened over here, only what happened over here.
But because there are no real leaks from the Mueller team, we don't know whether or not they're looking into that. They could actually be looking into that right now.
But I mean, number one, does it interest you that Carter Page has not been brought in to speak to the Mueller team? Hillary Clinton has not been brought in to speak to the Mueller team. They have not really re-interviewed Peter Strzok to say, you know, why did you not swear her in when you went one-on-one that Saturday right after the weekend of the 4th of July?
All we really know about what the Mueller team is doing is they're prosecuting the case in Alexandria, Virginia right now regarding Paul Manafort. Everything else,
we know the witness list.
Everything else, we don't know what they're doing with those guys.
Well, Marco Rubio said just let it pan out, let it play out, let them figure out the investigation. Hopefully we'll find out some answers soon.
It's easy because Marco Rubio's not the one being investigated.
Yeah. All right, Jillian has some headlines for us. Hope you had a great weekend.
I did, thank you. You too. Good Monday morning. We start with the Fox News alert right now, so let's get you caught up on this. The Trump administration is ready to reimpose sanctions on Iran. The penalties will go into effect just after midnight tonight and will be the first since the Obama-era nuclear deal was scrapped. President Trump says he's willing to meet with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani to lay groundwork for a better nuclear deal. The sanctions come as the value of the Iranian rial, which is their currency, is at a record low. Another Fox News alert now. 6 people are arrested in Venezuela after an alleged drone attack on President Maduro. New video has emerged of what Maduro calls an assassination attempt. Drones reportedly packed with explosives. Look at that, exploding as Maduro spoke during a military parade in the socialist country. He later said a group of terrorists and assassins were detained. Some firefighters said the blast was merely a gas explosion at a nearby apartment building. 5 people are dead after a plane crashes in California in a mall parking lot. A dash cam video showing the moments the small plane heading to the John Wayne Airport southeast of Los Angeles came spiraling down. The pilot declared an emergency just before the crash. Everyone on board was killed. No one on the ground was hurt. The cause is being investigated. Charlotte Rae, the actress best known as the beloved Mrs. Garrett on the hit sitcom The Facts of Life, has died.
I gotta get going. I gotta make the bed, vacuum the rug, do the laundry, scrub the floors, clean the windows. Everything's gotta be perfect.
The 2-time Tony nominee and Emmy nominee first played the role on Different Strokes in 1978. Her cause of death not yet released, but in April of last year, Rae revealed she was diagnosed with bone cancer. Her family says she died peacefully in her Los Angeles home. Charlotte Rae was 92. Send it back to you.
And she left us laughing.
Yeah, we grew up with her.
Yep.
Great.
Gosh, she was so sweet and loving on that show. Anyway.
All right. Thank you very much, Jillian. Meanwhile, straight ahead, could there be a big break in the search for Molly Tibbetts out in Iowa? What about that hog farmer? Ted Williams spoke to him, and he joins us live with brand new information from Iowa next.
Yeah, we have exclusive information here at Fox. And remember when actor Peter Fonda called for Barron Trump to be put in a cage? This morning, he's got another idea, voter fraud, to get Democrats elected. He's a genius.
You remember what they asked me? It was a waste of my time. I know that. I have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's just a bad deal.
Fox News alert, that is that Iowa pig farm owner with a history of stalking arrests, questioned for apparently the 3rd time now by authorities in connection to the disappearance of 20-year-old Molly Tibbetts. This as a neighbor telling Fox News a suspicious black SUV was slowly circling the area the night Molly vanished nearly now 3 weeks ago. Fox News contributor and former detective Ted Williams spent the weekend working the scene in Iowa. He was there last week as well. He spoke to that farmer, and he joins us from D.C. with the latest. Ted, when you were talking to the farmer, I'm kind of curious. Apparently, he has declined the police's offer to take a lie detector. Why is that?
Yeah, you know, that's very interesting. And when I spoke to him, I asked him with some specificity, why won't you take the polygraph? And he said, no, and he continued to say no. I said, well, don't you want to help out there? And he said, yeah, but no, I'm not taking the polygraph, is what he represented.
Right. And it sounds like the police have talked to him 2 or 3 times now. Was it on his property that they did find a red shirt that would have matched her red shirt that she might have been wearing in advance of going to work the next day?
Well, they found a red shirt that she would normally wear to work, but they, as of this time, from what I understand, they've not been able to show a nexus between that red shirt, and no, it was not found on his property, but right in the vicinity of his property is my understanding that they found his red shirt.
Okay. Also, there was a story, I believe it came out on Friday or Saturday, where the police had located the body of a 20-year-old white female in Lee County, and there was some suggestion that maybe while it wasn't Molly, there could be a connection.
Yeah, this is very scary. I'm hoping that the authorities will come out today and tell us the manner and the cause of death of the person that they found in Lee County that was around the age of Molly, because one of the big questions out there is there a serial killer? Why are young people out there dying? And quite naturally, the community, the nerves of that community is already up, and so they want to know also the manner and the cause of death of the young lady that they unfortunately found out there in Lee County.
Well, there is now, I believe the reward is north of $250,000, so perhaps somebody who knows something will call the sheriff's office. By the way, if anybody has any information, the sheriff's office and the number to call is 641-623-5679. All right. Ted, thank you very much for joining us this morning from D.C.
Pleasure.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. 6:20 now here in New York City. Army Corporal Terrell Fuller was just 20 years old when he went missing in South Korea in 1951. This week, his body is returning home. His great niece joins us live with what this moment will mean for the entire family. That is coming up next.
Good morning to you and welcome back. Time for some quick headlines. The man arrested for threatening Congressman Steve Scalise had a stockpile of ammunition. Police say he also had materials and instructions to build bombs. The New Yorker was arrested last week for leaving threatening messages for both Scalise and Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rogers last month. Scalise was nearly killed in the shooting at a congressional baseball practice last summer. And the son of Osama bin Laden is now married to the daughter of a 9/11 hijacker. The family of the dead terror leader telling The Guardian 29-year-old Hamza bin Laden, here on the left, married the daughter of Mohammed Atta. The family says Hamza is now an al-Qaeda leader himself, vowing to avenge his father's death. Brian.
And Ainsley, thank you, Jillian. Defense officials say the remains returned to Hawaii last week could take years to identify. So what do the families of these Korean War service members have to look forward to while they wait?
The family of Army Corporal Terrell J. Fuller can tell them the remains of the 20-year-old who went missing in action back in 1951 and was declared dead by the military in 1954 is finally returning home to Georgia this week, and he's going to be escorted by his great-great-nephew, who is also an Army soldier.
Here to tell us more is Terrell's great niece, Amy Hicks, and it's her son who will be traveling to Hawaii this week for this great family moment. So, Amy, what's it been like for you since you got word that the remains were there and now you're finally getting definitive answers?
It has been amazing. Just a lot of support from the local community. I've had so many calls from news media, just, trying to get the story out there and trying to see what they can do to help make it such an easy process to get him back home.
He was 20 years old when he went off to war, so he didn't have a wife, didn't have children. I know he would be so grateful to know that his family is still remembering him. What was it like growing up? Did your family talk about him a lot?
I never heard too much about them talking about him. My mother, she was 5 years old when her father passed away. So when Terrell went missing, my mother wasn't born yet. So there wasn't really too much talk about Terrell when she was growing up. She probably heard, his name here and there, but as far as much learning about him or knowing, about his lifestyle. There wasn't really much talk about that.
Why was it important for your son to go and go with the remains as your uncle comes home?
It's an honor for him to be able to go out there and get the remains and bring it back. Not only with him being military, it gives him a deeper understanding as to what life in the military means. Most people look at the military, you go out there, you're putting your life on the line. This is what you see behind the scenes when, your soldier, your loved one doesn't come back home. And he's actually getting to fit into the scenario of what it would be like if something like that was to happen, somewhere else.
Amy, it was very important to us as a channel to cover the remains that were recently brought back, those 55 boxes, because we want to help these families get reconnected to their loved ones and people who made the ultimate sacrifice for us. Your uncle was brought back, I understand, in the 90s, is that right? Because there were remains that were taken to Hawaii back in the 90s. And did your family get a call then to say your uncle's remains had been found?
There was no calls made back in the 1990s. They were not sure of who all the boxes contained back then. They had to go in, they had to find DNA testing, they had to, get all kinds of DNA strings from different families to be able to locate this. And from what I understand, when his remains were brought over, they actually contained the remains of 5 different soldiers.
Wow.
So they had to piece together each skeletal, bone and do DNA testing on each specific one in order to determine who was who.
So when did you find out that it was your uncle?
It was April of this year.
All right, and lastly, what about the families wondering if their great uncle or their grandfather or their loved one is in the last shipment? What advice do you have for them?
Just hang in there. There's always hope. You can always, just sit back. Provide the DNA testing, definitely. If no one reaches out to you, definitely go on the DPAA website. There's a link on there that you can contact them to, provide your DNA, but always stay in touch with them, keep the DNA going, and just hope for the best.
All right. Amy, thanks so much. Amy Hicks, appreciate it.
Thank you. And it's wonderful. Your uncle will never be forgotten.
Right. And
Tell your son thank you for his service.
And also, I think everyone should take some time and look up that Korean War. They called it a conflict. The people that fought in the war, it was a brutal war. The Chinese came in. We were unprepared. We ramped up in the middle. And no one ever really gives these veterans the credit they deserve for fighting in that war. And hopefully these Korean War vets will get their time in the spotlight that never came their way.
Brian, almost 7,700 remains of Americans are still missing to this day.
And the North Koreans have it. Hopefully they'll let us go retrieve it in areas in which they have not gone yet.
All right, in other news, 10 killed, 63 shot in Chicago over the weekend alone. And here is a message from one Democrat.
We have to make sure that President Trump recognized that not everyone believes that Chicago is a Trump-free zone.
That man, Chicago State Democratic Representative LaShawn Ford, joins us live next.
And a little bit of quiz here. Where would you rather be, a metal concert or a nursing home? Meet the two guys who broke out to rock out.
This past weekend, gun violence ripping across Chicago, killing 10 and leaving dozens wounded.
One protester who took to the streets on Thursday to try to stop the growing violence had a message for the president.
We have to make sure that President Trump recognized that not everyone believes that Chicago is a Trump-free zone. If he's serious about helping the people in Chicago, especially on the west side of Chicago, I accept his help.
Wow. Joining us right now to discuss the city, the crisis that it's in and the carnage that's happening is Democratic Illinois State Representative LaShawn Ford. LaShawn, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it. We saw you on the street there. What could you expect, or what do you hope the president does?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and I'm so happy to be working with your contributor, Gianna Caldwell, who's from Chicago. As a Democrat, I come here today calling on the president. He said he wanted to help people in Chicago. I accept that help. That's number one. We have to receive the help from the president of the United States. Illinois is one of the states that sends billions of dollars to the federal government, and the taxpayers of Illinois help now. As a Democrat from Chicago, we are in a state of emergency in Chicago. Over 1,700 people have been shot since the beginning of the year. And this weekend, you guys have noted that 63, but of the 63, 3 of those people were shot right steps from my church on the west side of Chicago. One shot dead in the head, and also we had 2 others critically wounded. Right steps from my church, St. Martin de Porres, on the west side of Chicago.
Terrible. Hey, LaShawn, I know that part of the rally that Gianna went to on Thursday was to try to embarrass the Mayor Rahm Emanuel, to get him to do something. The Chicago Police Department, you say, is not trusted by the people. Explain that.
Well, it's clear that the Chicago Police Department is not trusted with the mass genocide that's happening on the streets of Chicago. You can't get the cooperation with the citizens in the community to help solve the crimes. Chicago right now have more unsolved crimes than they do solved crimes. And so what we have to do is make sure that there's some trust between the Chicago police and the community.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
You have to be fair, you have to be honest, and you have to make sure that you're respecting the people that you patrol. I represent a community on the west side that the government allows drugs and gangs to dominate those communities, where senior citizens and children are hostage. They're held hostage in their homes, they're held hostage in their community, and they can't enjoy the liberties that are afforded to them by everyone else. And that's unacceptable. Yeah. And we need the president's help in Chicago, because we pay taxes, we send federal money. Illinois is one of the states that send
you guys certainly are taxed.
Yes.
Yeah, LaShawn.
So I know that America, we go on the international community and we help some of the communities that are the most violent. And I know that we can stop the crime in Chicago if we can stop crime and make peace in the countries where I know that it's much more violent and there's more intelligence to it. We can't let the criminals outsmart our most intelligent people in America. We can stop this if we really wanted to.
LaShawn, what's your message for your mayor, for Rahm Emanuel?
I think the mayor, he must take away the thought that Chicago is a Trump-free zone, because taxpayers deserve to have the president come in and bring resources to the community. We need to make sure that the billions of dollars that we send to Washington comes back, and the mayor should be working closely with Trump. He should be working closely with the Labor Department. He should be working closely with the U.S. HUD, the Surgeon General, because there's so much trauma on the west and south sides of Chicago. We must do everything.
LaShawn, he's very focused on he's very focused on people like sanctuary cities.
I'm not going to throw the mayor under the bus. I'm going to let him know that I want to work with him. Right. I want to work with the police superintendent, and I want to work with your contributor, Gianna Caldwell, so that we can bring the community together and make things work. Well, but as long as we are divided and fighting against the president, it's not going to happen.
Okay, there you got the headline. Chicago is not a Trump-free zone. They need help. LaShawn Ford, a Democratic Illinois state representative, we thank you very much for joining us from your home today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And good luck.
Thank you, yes.
Hopefully the president will bring him to the White House, bring some representatives to the White House, find out firsthand what the problem is.
And maybe they can help.
Hopefully, those poor moms losing their little ones. An 11-year-old was shot over the weekend.
His point about senior citizens and children are hostage. They can't leave their house because they're afraid they're going to get killed.
But the other thing is about cops. It's like it's a two-way street. Yeah, they have to. He wants more respect from the cops for the people. You have to show respect to law enforcement too.
Absolutely.
You both. I mean, somehow that message got to get out.
Well, the people don't trust the cops in Chicago, he says, and that is part of the problem.
I'll tell you, we trust Jillian.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I trust you guys too.
Thank you. Good.
Isn't that wonderful? All right, now that we're all happy and trust each other, let's get you caught up on what's going on in California, because at least 20 people are behind bars this morning after violent clashes erupt between two groups of protesters in Berkeley. As you can see, police arriving in riot gear as the far-right No to Marxism rally was countered by the far left Stop the Hate rally. Dozens of weapons, including rocks and poles, were confiscated. 3 people suffered injuries after some type of explosives were thrown. No officers were hurt. Remember when actor Peter Fonda tweeted about putting President Trump's son, Barron, in a cage? Well, now he's back for his second act, and this time he wants Democrats to commit voter fraud to win the midterms. Fonda tweeting in part, quote, "If you have a millennial in your family, take their early ballots, fill them out and mail them in, or take the ballot to the voting place and give it to the officials. No more worrying." Many users quickly pointing out that is a felony. A back-to-school event meant to promote peace turns violent in a heartbeat. Video is hard to watch. Gunfire breaking out during that event at a Florida park. Fortunately, though, the shooting was stopped by a good guy with a gun. The bystander, who was licensed to carry, fired back immediately. The initial shooter was the only person injured. 2 elderly men escape a nursing home to attend the world's biggest heavy metal festival. You can't make this up. The nursing home in Germany raising a red flag when they couldn't find them. It wasn't until 3 a.m. when police found the duo at the Wacken Open Air Festival. They say the men were disoriented and dazed. The pair, who did not want to leave, were eventually persuaded to head home in a taxi, escorted by a cop car. So look at your headlines, and I guess I just hope they had a good time. I mean, they're safe, you know, all's well that ends well, so maybe they had some fun.
If they're going to make a break, that's where they're heading. Now we know.
The heavy metal concert.
Yep.
That Brian just calls metal concert.
Right. I'm in the business, so that's right.
He shortens it.
Right. I get Rolling Stone magazine. What is another metal magazine? Isn't there another?
You're the expert.
Right.
Yeah.
A metal magazine. See,
If you're in Twisted Sister, please call. I'd like to know what magazines you get. Straight ahead, coming up. One bookstore cashier, tour guide, and diversity peer leader. One school is hiring students to fight social injustice on campus. Wait until you hear how much that job pays.
All right, time now for your quick headlines on this Monday morning. First up, Demi Lovato breaking her silence after being hospitalized for a drug overdose a couple of weeks ago. The singer saying on Instagram she's taking time to focus on her sobriety and recovery. Lovato ending her message with, quote, "I will keep fighting." All right. And a former NSYNC member is saying bye, bye, bye to dreams of owning the Brady Bunch house.
Might sound crazy, but it ain't no lie. Baby, bye, bye, bye.
Yeah, Lance Bass isn't going to buy it. He says a Hollywood studio outbid him, even though he claims he was told he won. Winning bid has not been revealed. The exteriors of the house were used in nearly every episode of the Brady Bunch that ran from 1969 to 1974. That is the real interior, not seen on TV.
Wow, that's pretty. That's a pretty room. Give it to Lance. He wants it.
Somebody else bought it. Sorry, Ainsley.
That's so cool.
All right, Brian, over to you.
All right, Ainsley, we'll follow that story throughout the show. I'll continue with this one. Hey, the Trump administration having near unprecedented success confirming nominees to the federal bench. Now, 1 in 7 federal judges are Trump appointees. What impact will this have on an ever-evolving judiciary down the line? Here to break it down, former law clerk himself to Justice Gorsuch, who went on to bigger and better things, and director of the National Security Law and Policy Program at George Mason, Jamil Jafar. Jamil, great to see you.
Hey, good to be here, Brian.
Well, what an impact he's made already, right? Let's begin. Here we go. This is compared to other presidents. President Trump, a year and a half in, has got 24 opportunities. He's filled them.
It's really unbelievable. I mean, that's an average of 17 a year. What that means is that by the time he finishes his first term in office, he'll have as many as President Obama in 2 terms, almost double.
Right. And this is all just about opportunity. They're just coincidence. They happen to be open at this time. But then you got to get them confirmed. The Democrats have been delaying, but they can't deny.
That's right. And Mitch McConnell's done a really good job. Chuck Grassie's really kicking butt out there. And they're pushing this ball forward. But the president's really got the responsibility. He's nominated these folks, got great nominees, and they're real rock stars. And they're able to get through the Senate and make it to the judiciary.
So what does it mean in terms of a ratio? 1 in 7 of the these judges in the circuit court will be Trump appointees.
Yeah. Well, look, this is really important. It's all about the stability and the rule of law here. Average Americans will know how the law is going to be for them because they'll have judges who interpret the law in line with what Congress and the president wrote, not with what they want the law to be.
So that's the big worry. That's what Democrats feel as though there's sometimes Republicans accuse Democrats of legislating from the bench. And in theory, Republicans don't do that.
Well, exactly. You know, Justice Gorsuch said, judges need to know that they wear robes, not capes.
That's a good line, by the way. Did you give it to him?
No, that was his.
Okay, good. Trump's judiciary legacy so far, the average age of he or she, 49 years old.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is a young judiciary. They're on the bench for life. So these folks are going to be there a long time. People like Britt Grant on the 11th Circuit, Mike Scudder on the 7th Circuit, Andy Oldham on the 5th Circuit. These are all very young nominees under the age of 50, up there for a long time.
And now here are the ones in the bullpen right now, waiting for their time for confirmation, which Senator Schumer's holding out. You got 10.
Well, look, the Democrats are holding them up on the floor. They're making the Republicans run the entire 30-hour post-cloture clock. It's really unfortunate because you've got a huge lineup of nominees, not just judicial nominees, but tons of Trump nominees just stacked up behind these. But Mitch McConnell's doing the right thing and getting these lifetime appointments on the bench.
Right, and the whole thing is, which is ironic, is that they have to work in August because Mitch McConnell's saying because you keep delaying, I'm going to make you work in August. Last year there was a big deal to stop the bottleneck. I'm wondering if there might be a big deal now.
Well, one can only hope. Obviously, members of Congress want to get out of town, back to their districts for the elections. But at the end of the day, they've got to get the nominees through because these are really important judicial appointments all the way for life.
And you got to get to George Mason because school's going to start soon.
Exactly.
Jamil, thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Brian.
All right, coming up straight ahead, President Trump warning the Democrats that there'll be a blue wave. Yeah, but he believes that blue wave will be crashing.
If the Democrats get in, they're going to raise your taxes. You're going to have crime all over the place. So why would that be a blue wave? I think it could be a red wave.
We'll see as early as Tuesday to get an indication last special election. We're breaking down the numbers that could spell trouble for Democrats and might not. Plus, bookstore cashier, tour guide, and diversity peer leader, one school hiring students to fight social injustice on campus. Seriously, that story next.
All right, time now for your quick headlines on this Monday morning. First up, Demi Lovato breaking her silence after being hospitalized for a drug overdose a couple of weeks ago. The singer saying on Instagram she's taking time to focus on her sobriety and recovery. Lovato ending her message with, quote, "I will keep fighting." All right. And a former NSYNC member is saying bye, bye, bye to dreams of owning the Brady Bunch house. Lance Bass isn't going to buy it. He says a Hollywood studio outbid him, even though he claims he was told he won. The winning bid has not been revealed. The exteriors of the house were used in nearly every episode of the Brady Bunch that ran from 1969 to 1974. That is the real interior, not seen on TV.
Wow, that's pretty. That's a pretty room. Give it to Lance. He wants it.
Somebody else bought it. Sorry, Ainsley.
That's so cool.
All right, Brian, over to you.
All right, Ainsley, we'll follow that story throughout the show. I'll continue with this one. Hey, the Trump administration having near unprecedented success confirming nominees to the federal bench. Now, 1 in 7 federal judges are Trump appointees. What impact will this have on an ever-evolving judiciary down the line? Here to break it down, former law clerk himself to Justice Gorsuch, who went on to bigger and better things, and director of the National Security Law and Policy Program at George Mason, Jamil Jafar. Jamil, great to see you.
Hey, good to be here, Brian.
What an impact he's made already, right? Let's begin. Here we go. This is compared to other presidents. Yeah. President Trump, a year and a half in, has got 24 opportunities. He's filled them.
It's really unbelievable. I mean, that's an average of 17 a year. What that means is that by the time he finishes his first term in office, he'll have as many as President Obama in 2 terms, almost double.
Right. And this is all just about opportunity. They just coincidence. They happen to be open at this time. But then you got to get them confirmed. The Democrats have been delaying, but they can't deny.
That's right. And Mitch McConnell's done a really good job. Chuck Grassie's really kicking butt out there. And they're pushing this ball forward. But the president's really got the responsibility. He's nominated these folks, got great nominees, and they're real rock stars. And they're able to get through the Senate and make it to the judiciary.
So what does it mean in terms of a ratio? 1 in 7 of the these judges in the circuit court will be Trump appointees.
Yeah. Well, look, this is really important. It's all about the stability and the rule of law here. Average Americans will know how the law is going to be for them because they'll have judges who interpret the law in line with what Congress and the president wrote, not with what they want the law to be.
So that's the